Burton Malkiel says, persistent saving in regular amounts, no matter how small, pays off. I come from this school of advisors. I'm not going to sit with Excel sheets. I'm not saying you need this, therefore you have to do this, therefore you don't have to do this. No. What can you do? What's your income? What's your expenditure? How much can you save? Let's try to do something with it now. Divide it into an emergency fund, a retirement fund. There's one more fund called the general investment fund, which I'll tell you, if not today, next time we meet. So this is what I am going to do and what I am able to do. And the great writers, they don't torture Excel sheets. They don't torture Excel sheets. They take something that is doable today, and you can see the first word there. They persist with it. They persist with it. Robin Sharma, the price of discipline is always less than the pain of regret. A need versus a want. If we can distinguish between these two, and if we can postpone a mere want, take care of our needs, slightly postpone a want, especially when we have an alternative to that want, not blow up money on. It is a little bit of self-discipline that is required. It is not a discipline that has to be imposed on us by some third party. The key to good investment is that a discipline must be imposed on us by ourselves, because we are responsible. At least we should be responsible. And the price that you pay, I wanted that gadget today, but I've got an alternative which is working okay. So I don't buy it today. We'll postpone it 6 months, 1 year. We will not allow it to interfere with our savings program. We will not stop a savings program to take a holiday abroad. That price that you pay is always lesser than the pain of regret. Later on, I regret I should not have spent so much. I should have saved a little more. So understand this. The cost benefit works in favor of self-discipline. And how do we try to implement this? This is a very important slide. What do we generally do in our life? We earn an income, we have an expenditure. Whatever remains is saved. Income minus expenditure is equal to savings. This is a totally wrong way of handling it. The right way is to change the equation to this: income minus savings is equal to expenditure. I know I'm earning so much. This much has to go into savings. Once again, it's like tax deducted at source. My salary is 50,000 rupees a month. I am saving 15,000 rupees a month as per my plan. 35,000 rupees per month is available to me to meet my needs for the month. Mentally, I should understand that my salary is 35,000 rupees a month. That's all. Why? 15,000 rupees is not mine. It belongs to my savings program. It is mine, but at the correct stage in life, it will be mine. To meet certain needs, at that time it will be mine. I am not earning 50,000. I am earning 35,000. The moment I am earning 35,000, I will arrange my affairs to live prudently and comfortably within that time frame. This is what has to be done. This is very, very important. First, the saving. It's good if on payday, on whatever day, certain amount can be taken, locked away, then only this much is left in the bank. When I write to the bank, I see balance is only 35. Something might have come, something might have gone. Balance is 35. So this would be a very, very good change of mindset to be a successful investor. There are some good thumb rules. These thumb rules are thumb rules. They are not guaranteed ironclad insurance policies. We saw one thumb rule. When in doubt in the Indian context, what should be the size of your emergency fund? In the last session, we saw that the size of my emergency fund should be 1 year's normal living expenses or 12 months normal living expenses rounded off to the next higher 1 lakh. Let me put the thumb rule into context. So will this thumb rule, I have fulfilled it. 40,000 rupees is my monthly expenditure. 40,000 into 12 is 4.8. Round off to the next higher 1 lakh, 5 lakhs. 5 lakhs is my emergency fund. I now have my emergency fund established. Does it mean I can take care of all emergencies? Absolutely not. But this thumb rule is based on what people have observed from normal people's lives. You can have an emergency that requires less than 5 lakhs. You can have an emergency that requires more than 5 lakhs. My question is simple. When the emergency arises and it needs even more than 5 lakhs, isn't the person who has got this 5 lakhs in a better position than somebody who has got 0? That is the significance of a thumb rule. That is the significance of a thumb rule. So, there is one more thumb rule to tell me, guide me, how much should I save for retirement of my normal income. The thumb rule is 10% of my net income. What is net income? Net income is income minus deductions, all the deductions was EPF, other things, minus taxation. For a business person or others, professional, they can take an average of the last 1 year and do it accordingly. 10% of my net income. Income is 50,000. After deductions and taxation, it is 40,000. 10% of 40,000 is 4,000. Supposing it is 35,000, 3,500. Kindly round it off to the next higher 1,000. So 35,000 net income, not 3,500, make it 4,000. Next highest 1,000. This should be what I am setting aside every month for a long time. Now my friend Basavaraj during the break, he asked me, this is all very good if somebody is starting very early. What if somebody is starting a little late? Of course you can make it a little more, 15%, 20%. A good advisor will always guide you depending on all your other circumstances. What are your priorities? For example, health insurance, life insurance if you need it, and an emergency fund. These are priorities. We start with this. Next we look at retirement. Now I'm a little late in retirement. So I can certainly have a little more. It all depends. That's where an advisor will guide you. This is, I'm giving you a framework for what is minimum. This is the minimum that I set aside for retirement. Start here, then see how to calibrate it in the light of your experience. Similarly, a withdrawal strategy from equity funds. Very few people are aware of this. There are some people who, they have built up very good portfolios of either equity or equity funds for the long run. Now we are in the retirement phase where we want to withdraw for our expenses. I'll take the example of an equity mutual fund. Some people cash a part of their equity mutual funds, shift it to bank deposits and get the regular income. If you are comfortable with that, you can do it, there is no problem. One more very intelligent way of doing it is, perhaps you shift the money to a balanced fund or keep it in equity itself and adopt a 5% withdrawal strategy per year. Let's say after 30-40 years of investing, you have got 1 crore in equity mutual funds. 5% of 1 crore is 5 lakhs. If you do a quarterly systematic withdrawal, 1,25,000 falls into your bank account every quarter. That's enough for about 3 months, let's say, expenses. If you are happy with this, you can directly withdraw from the fund. It's very tax efficient because after 1 year there is no tax. You will not be paying tax. What comes into your bank account, you will spend. Sometimes your equity portfolio values will drop, sometimes they will grow. But since you are withdrawing only 5%, that too 1.25% per quarter, there is a very high probability, very high probability that not only will you not reduce your 1 crore in the short run, since the actual equity returns are much higher than the 5% you are withdrawing, that corpus will also grow slowly and steadily over a period of time. So unlike a bank deposit, after let's say 5 years, after withdrawing, your 1 crore might have gone to 1 crore 25, 1 crore 30 or 1 crore 40 lakhs. Now you know inflation is there, my 5 lakh withdrawal was not enough. You can now change it to 5% of say 1 crore 40 or 1 crore 30 lakhs. Automatically it takes care of inflation. So this is also a very good strategy, at least part of it. But if you want the total peace of mind, I don't want to have any tension about how my next month's income is coming in to meet my expenses, definitely you can shift a certain portion to bank deposits, especially up to 5 lakh rupees where you are still in the 10.3% bracket. Please note, 10.3% does not kill anyone. And the 10.3% tax bracket is misleading. Nobody pays 10.3% up to 5 lakhs because 2,50,000 is the basic exemption. You are not taxed on that. So the tax you are paying is half of 5 lakhs. On half, that is the half of 10.3%. Nobody goes above 5%. Tax does not pinch you there. Tax starts hurting once you get into the 20% and higher tax brackets. That's where we look at serious tax planning. Many times we tell people, your income is 4.5 lakhs. There's no need to be obsessive about tax planning. Pay the tax. If you need the other money to spend, pay the tax. How much is it after all? It hardly comes to 5%. So this may be a good way. This is one of the options you have got depending on what you understand. Now, I don't know whether I made the point the last time we met. If not, let me make the point now. A very important criteria for success in our personal investments is to have a very clear-cut way of thinking. And if by some chance our thinking on these matters is not clear, then we have to change our mindset. It is not difficult to change a mindset if the change is not very harsh or very major. I'll give you a simple way of thinking of your investments. Just go back and see whether you can make this change in your mindset. I tell investors, don't talk to me about a PPF account, bank deposit, equity mutual fund, stock, demat account, government bond. No, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. Classify each and every one of these under one of 3 heads and only talk to me about those 3 heads. What are those 3 heads? Number 1 is an emergency fund. Number 2 is a retirement fund. Number 3 is a general investment fund. Whatever, PPF, don't tell me PPF, where does it come under these 3? He says retirement fund, agreed. Long-term ELSS SIPs, which part of your investments are retirement fund? Fine, no problem. There is one more fund that we understand and that we should understand. I'm giving you an introduction to it today. Towards the end of this presentation, maybe next time when we meet, I'll once again be returning to it. It is called the General Investment Fund. Let us understand the difference between a retirement fund and a general investment fund. A retirement fund is to take care of the financial needs of the individual and his or her spouse from the date of retirement till the end of life of the survivor among them. A general investment fund is to meet certain lump sum irregular expenses that generally crop up during a person's working lifetime. The first difference between these 2 funds is retirement is from retirement till end of life. General investment fund is set up during our working life to meet certain expenses that crop up during our working life. What kind of expenses? Not normal living expenses. Normal living expenses are met from normal income. Not emergency expenses. They are met from the emergency fund. Lump sum irregular expenses. Examples of them are children's higher education, down payment on a house, vehicle purchase, family vacations, religious and social functions, even some family support. I have to take care of some brother, sister, parent. So all the social, religious functions, marriages, all they cost money. If I've got a house, some 20 years later, I may need to renovate it. You'll find the cost of the renovation probably more than the cost of the house in today's terms. You need money for this. For these kind of expenses, you need a separate fund called a general investment fund, so that when you have this fund, you don't end up withdrawing money from your emergency fund or withdrawing money from your retirement fund. Okay, so right now I'm only going to introduce this concept of the general investment fund. I will return to it later because there is a context in which I have to present that general investment fund. What I'm trying to tell you to do now is, the reason why I put it here is, ultimately, whether your total net worth is 10 lakhs or 10 crores, personal investment becomes very simple. You have to think of all your investments as falling under one of 3 things. Emergency, retirement, general investment. In fact, I have been able to do this. Even the other day, I made a mistake. When somebody came to my office, this person has set up an emergency fund correctly equal to 1 year's normal living expenses rounded off to the next higher 1 lakh. But now what's happened is expenses have gone up slightly. The income of the emergency fund has also increased it, but there is a gap. So he has come to top it up. By mistake, I mentioned, okay, so you have come to top up XYZ fund. He said, my emergency fund. He corrected me. You look at how he's thinking. For him, the name of the fund is immaterial. Already there is in his mind the objective of the fund. And then he tells me, you only told us to only talk about emergency fund, retirement. I said, yes, sorry, my mistake. So emergency fund, we top up the emergency fund. Okay, this is beautiful way of thinking. And I don't think this is so hard to alter our mindset. Whenever we feel like using that word PPF, let us use it. But let us first look at the objective. Under my retirement fund, I have my PPF, I have my ELSS SIP. Fine. All your mutual funds, small savings, bank deposits, employees provident fund, all these things are only tools. You have to use those tools to fabricate a good plan. The design is important, and the design is to view these things under these 3 categories: emergency, retirement, general investment. The tools are not greater than the ultimate design and the ultimate product. They are only means to an end. You use that to achieve the end. So, before we meet again, let us try to, in our mind, slowly alter our way of thinking to think of all our monies, all our investments as always falling under one of these 3 categories. If we do that, it will be a giant step in making our own personal investments more and more effective. The other thing is, I looked at the public provident fund. I told you how if somebody keeps on investing for 30, 40 years, it's not an easy task, but if somebody does it, they will probably have more than enough money to retire comfortably, only from the PPF. You can ask me one question. Why then do you also recommend things like equity mutual funds, etc., which have some element of risk? This is so safe. Government of India may not fail, although politicians try to do their best to make it fail, but it may not fail. So we are more protected with the what is that called, PPF. There is one important reason why I insist on some portion going into genuine growth investments like real estate or like equity. What is that reason? Because in a very long period of a person's working life, 3-4 decades, even a 1% difference in return can mean a huge difference in the end corpus, what you are getting finally. Simple example. This is not SIP. Lump sum. I invest 1 lakh today, 10% compounded annualized growth rate, and I invested for 40 years. After 40 years, I'll suddenly wake up, my 1 lakh has become 45.20 lakhs. Okay? Same example, I invest 1 lakh today for 40 years, 11%, I'm 65 lakhs. And I'll just give you one more percentage point, 12, I'm 93 lakhs. What is the difference in return between 1 and 3? 2%. 10 versus 12. What is the difference in end corpus? Double. First 7, 8, 9 years, you will only see very small divergence. Then one starts taking off like this, the other continues at the lower level. So if you are looking at, you need not wait till 40 lakhs. All dramatic things start happening after 11, 12, 13 years. Equity does give you a higher return. I'm not asking, if you're not comfortable, don't put everything in equity. When in doubt, follow that 60-40. That's a worldwide recognized asset allocation. When in doubt, you don't want to do all fine calculations. You persist with a 60-40 between debt and equity. When the markets fall, the 40% debt will protect your portfolio to a very great extent. Very few of us know that. Even a small amount of debt in a total equity portfolio helps protect you when the markets fall to a very great extent. You don't have the kind of heartburn that other entire equity portfolio people have. But please note that in the very long term, when you're talking about a retirement time horizon, if you're not going to have something, you may end up only here, where you could have very easily ended up at the higher level. So the difference in return is just 2%. The difference in end corpus can mean something totally different. So what do you choose for retirement? If you're lucky enough to have the EPF, there is no better retirement avenue than the Employees Provident Fund, to the extent that there is a matching contribution from the employer. Understand this. Equity, real estate, anything can't give you those returns. Why? It is buy one, get one free. If the EPF rate is 9%, my return is 18%. Why? The employer is matching that contribution to the extent that there is a matching contribution. And this is not just India, worldwide. All the good books, all the pictures you saw here, those authors tell you the same thing. To the extent that there is a matching contribution by the employer, you must fully utilize that in your whatever Employees Provident Fund in India, 401k, IRA accounts in the US, whatever it is, matching contribution, exploit that fully. Nothing comes close to the returns that you will get here. Equity can't give you those returns. For the poor people like us who nobody gives employment, so we have to work on our own, PPF is good, not bad. Not bad, that's another good choice. Systematic investment into asset allocation funds, balanced funds, if you want a little lower risk, you don't want to be very greatly scared. Two good things happen to you here. One is the nature of the systematic investment, which buys lesser units when the markets are high, more units when the market is down. It moderates the risk in investment if you continue with your SIP. Second, when you are choosing an asset allocation or balanced fund where there is already debt and equity, that portfolio is of a lower volatility than an entire equity portfolio. So you have safety on that front, you have enhanced safety through the SIP. You will be surprised sometimes how low the volatility can be. A lot of people who went through the global financial crisis in a balanced fund, when the equity markets fell almost 60% in India, they were not too scared. They were not too scared. Their volatility was very much on the lower side. Then systematic investments into diversified equity fund, diversified index funds, diversified portfolio of blue chip stocks. Nobody says you have to go to a mutual fund. If you know how to invest in stocks, you can do it. If you don't know, please ask the people who have organized this. I've got a paper on equity investment which I've written, and I've given it to them for free distribution to anyone. You just ask them, they will send it to you. It's not so difficult as you think. It does not need study, nothing of that sort. It needs a little common sense, and in about 14 or 15 pages, I've explained everything that a normal investor would want to know about stock market investing. Yielding real estate. I know a person who throughout his life was a marine engineer in a ship, although his field was engineering, nothing to do with commerce or finance. I was really impressed by the way his mind works. Right from a young age, when he started earning and reasonably well, he knew that if I keep on keeping my money in bank fixed deposits, I'm not going to build a big enough corpus for my retirement. That too, he was eligible for NRE deposits, tax-free. Stock market, nobody was able to explain to him the stock market in a convincing and satisfactory manner. Everybody was trying to make him speculate, like most brokers do. What is the alternative? Real estate. So he first bought a piece of real estate that became his house. When that was over, he bought the next piece of real estate. When that loan was almost extinguished, he bought the next. Over a period of about 40 years, he totally acquired about 7 pieces of real estate. 2 or 3 in Mangalore, couple of them in Mysore because his wife is from Mysore, and maybe 2 or 3 in Bangalore. Look at the reasoning. Real estate I can manage. I will contact some advocate, somebody to give me a good this thing. I'll buy in 2 or 3 places. Stocks I don't understand. I will not go there. Bank deposits, instinctively I feel, may not beat inflation in the very long run. Today, he probably, all his children are educated, settled, probably will be spending some 50,000-60,000 per month maximum. His rental income is more than 2.5 lakhs per month. That is his retirement fund. So yielding real estate. The only problem is there are certain problems in real estate of management. As you grow older, repairs, other things. I'm going to talk to you the little I know about real estate, so I'm not dealing with that here. All I'm saying is that these are the sensible, good choices in retirement funding. You don't have to only pick one and reject the others. You can have a mix of them. If you are employed, you know something is going to the EPF, you can go more for equity. If you are self-employed, mix of PPF and equity is good. When in doubt, follow 60-40 and the other things that I have given there. If somebody can afford it, also real estate, no problem.